Last week, a group of 29 national faith groups came together to call on President Biden and Congress to close the U.S. prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The group wrote, quote, "Even today, 20 years after the prison was opened, most of the prisoners have never been tried or convicted of any crime. Guilty or innocent, the right to a trial is a bedrock American value. Yet it has been denied to those at Guantanamo, allowing the government to claim a war-based authority to hold people for decades without charge or trial is an extraordinary and dangerous expansion of governmental authority."
President Biden emphasized his commitment to closing the facility on the campaign trail in 2020, but his administration now plans to fund an upgrade of the prison to the tune of a new $4 million courtroom.
Matt Hawthorne, policy director at the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, which was one of the faith groups behind last week's letter, joins us now to discuss. Welcome to Rising.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
So why do you think there has been so little done to right this wrong? Guantanamo obviously was such a palpable symbol of the excesses of the war on terror, of our mistreatment of prisoners, and this just goes on and on. I guess the the public's interest wanes somewhat. What do you think?
Well, I might take small disagreement with the idea that very little has been done. Initially, when President Bush set up the prison, he transferred over 780 people there, many of whom, of course, ended up being innocent of any connection to terrorism, people who were sold for bounty, people who were victims of mistaken identity. But ultimately, the Bush administration transferred over 500 people out. And then the Obama administration transferred well over 100 people out. So there was significant progress during that period of time toward closing Guantanamo. Unfortunately, in the Trump administration, we saw basically a halt to that progress. President Trump transferred one person out during his term of office. And then President Biden has so far not improved upon that record. He has also transferred only one person out. And I think that, you can point to a variety of reasons. Obviously, you're right that the public's interest, it's hard to sustain over 20 years in something. I think also a lot of people in the public don't realize necessarily that Guantanamo is still open. President Obama promised to close Guantanamo during his first year in office. And after that, I think a lot of people just assumed it had gotten done.
So, Matt, how many people are left there, and what's going on that justifies the investment of $4 million into a new courtroom?
Yeah, so there are 39 people left there. Again, most of whom have never been charged with or tried for any crime, even, now closing in or past 2 decades after the prison was opened. I think I would argue that the new courtroom is not needed and not a good investment. So I don't think it is a justified investment. Instead, what we should be doing is transferring the people there who are already cleared by the U.S. government to leave the prison out. And that's 15 of the 39 people there are already cleared by the U.S. government to be transferred out. We should be arranging for plea deals with people that we intend to charge at some point, and then using those plea deals to again effectuate transfers. Many of them can probably be sentenced to time served, and if not, they have the possibility of serving time in a prison in another country. And then if there is anyone remaining in Guantanamo after taking those 2 steps, they ought to be sent to the U.S. for trial in federal courts. The military commissions have so far failed to even begin trial for the 9/11 detainees, now 20 years after 9/11. They are a failed and unfair system of justice that hasn't provided justice for either the defendants or for the victims of the 9/11 attacks. And we have a federal court system that has been, extremely effective at least trying suspected terrorists in the past. So there's no reason not to use that system if there is anyone who we can't either clear and transfer or arrange for plea deals followed by transfer.
Matt, what is their justification for this? I mean, are they saying that, well, these people aren't American citizens, their home countries will not repatriate them? Why are they being held, and why are they not being given a trial? What is their excuse?
Well, so I don't know that the Biden administration has a great excuse for that. The one complication for the people who they do intend to try, if there are groups that they can't agree to plea deals with, and again, they should pursue the plea deals first, is that Congress has passed legislation as recently as last year that bars detainees from being transferred to the U.S. for any reason, including trial or even for necessary medical treatment. But that legislation is renewed each year. There's no reason Congress has to renew that again, and there's no reason the Biden administration can't veto it if they believe it is in fact necessary to bring people here for trial. So that might be their excuse, but is a poor excuse.
Well, yeah, and I think they're maybe implicitly, if not explicitly, right, trying to make the argument that these people are dangerous. We couldn't have them in our country, even though they would still be, while they were going through trial system, they would still be incarcerated. They would not just be released onto the streets.
Yeah, I mean, that argument is absurd on a number of levels. One, they tracked recidivism rates during the Obama administration and their release of Guantanamo detainees. Again, the President Obama released over 100 Guantanamo detainees, and recidivism rates, and I say recidivism in quotes because, of course, a lot of these people were never involved in terrorism in the first place, but recidivism rates were extremely low. We're talking on the order of 5 or 10%. So lower than you would see from releasing people from an ordinary prison. And then secondly, as you say, yes, of course, anyone transferred here for trial, should that become necessary at some point, would of course also be incarcerated. And we have terrorists, whether we have white supremacist terrorists, we have people who, of a Muslim faith who are terrorists. We have terrorists of all stripes locked up in federal prisons right now who we are safe from. The idea that there is something different about the people locked in Guantanamo than the white supremacists or other terrorists locked in U.S. prisons in this country is just absurd.
My understanding is that the conditions at Guantanamo itself have improved since the early days, while it still might be unconscionable that they're being kept there. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I would say that's accurate, given that the early days, people have probably seen the images of the prison that was initially set up in the first 96 hours before detainees were transferred there. It was essentially barbed wire, plywood, guards with sniper rifles aimed at it. And of course, we were torturing prisoners there in the early days, too. The Bush administration tortured people with sexual humiliation, the use of dogs, abuse of the Quran, stress positions, waterboarding. All of those things were done to people at Guantanamo, and we are not doing those things anymore. So yes, conditions have certainly improved. That, of course, does not in any way justify holding people without trial on a foreign, on land that we leased from a communist government in Cuba. But yes, the conditions are obviously better than when we were torturing people there.
Well, Matt, what does accountability look like? Is that naive to even bring up? Is anyone going to be held responsible for this continued miscarriage of justice?
I would say that our priority is seeing that the miscarriage of justice ends. Mm-hmm. The key at this point, I think, is ensuring that Guantanamo detainees are either, again, cleared and transferred out or provided with plea deals and then transferred out. Or if that's not possible, then given a fair trial in U.S. courts. If those steps happen, that goes, we will be much closer to justice at that point than we are now. Obviously, the judgment of history will fall upon the people who set up Guantanamo and who have continued it. But I think that the priority, at this point, again, has to be closing it.
Are these detainees at least given lawyers?
Yeah, so the detainees do have access to lawyers. Okay. And that, that itself has been problematic in that there has been documented instances of people spying, of the U.S. government spying on conversations between lawyers and the detainees. Lawyers' access to the detainees has been restricted in various ways over the years. But yes, they do have lawyers. Okay. So they have that minimum standard now.
Okay.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
More Rising right after this.